Weeknights, 7 and 10 Eastern. Expect more.
Your company has invented the better mousetrap. Now, do you wait for the world to beat a path to your door? We've got a better idea. The program is Technogenesis, a weekly investigation at the leading edge of innovation in science and engineering, where faculty professionals, students, industry, and government work together to nurture new technologies. It is a hard truth that many fine ideas go undiscovered by the larger world. If Thomas Edison and his people were working today, even they might need a development plan. So get out your notebooks. This week we offer a primer in marketing new products. One of our guests has done that many times, the other wrote the book. Glenn Reitmeyer is Vice President Special Projects for Sarnoff Corporation, deeply involved in digital communications, consumer electronics, internet streaming, and multimedia. And that's just scratching the surface. His career includes 3 technical Emmy Awards, 5 startup companies, and many world's first achievements. He holds several dozen patents in digital video and digital media technology. Dr. Gary Lynn is an associate professor at the Wesley J. Howe School of Technology Management at Stevens Institute of Technology. He is a much published expert on technological innovation and marketing. He has recently completed a 10-year study of hundreds of product development efforts summarized in his new book, Blockbusters, How to Create Them and How Your Company Can Too.
And there were some studies that were done that says that it takes 3,000 ideas to make one commercially successful in the marketplace. So there's a conundrum that on one hand, companies need innovation to help increase their sales, profitability, and market share. But on the other hand, it's tremendously expensive and costly.
Glenn, how about HDTV? Can we look at that as an example here and help us with how difficult it is, or is there another more appropriate example?
Oh, I think there's lots of examples, but HDTV is certainly a good one. And it shows just how long it takes sometimes to really take a new technology and get it penetrated into the mass market of consumer electronics. In fact, the standard for HDTV followed about 6 or 7 years of long technical development in laboratories. The standard was set in late 1996.
Now, Gary, you spent, what, a decade interviewing looking into 700 companies and their projects.
Right. We were trying to understand, since companies want to innovate more regularly and more profitably, and they don't want to just come out with the next, if they are a pen manufacturer, they don't want to come out with just the next color, orange. They want something big. And so we looked at how do they come up with the next big thing, the next blockbuster. So we looked at close to 800 new product teams from companies that include Exxon, GE, AT&T, Cisco, Corning, many, many companies that you would know. And we tried to understand what are the factors that separate the really successful, the blockbuster teams from all the rest. So we studied a series of blockbusters, 49 blockbusters that include the IBM PC, the Black & Decker Dustbuster, the iOmega Zip Drive. You name the biggest projects ever launched, and we studied them. And we identified 5 critical practices that discriminate the truly successful, not only the truly successful from the failures, but the truly successful from the merely successful.
Now let's go through these once at a time. I just happen to have the list of them here. And as I read each one, you tell us, just give us a slight explanation of that, and then we'll go into it in more depth. So the first practice would be a strong and clear vision of the new product that does not change throughout development. So, for example, how involved do you want to get in each one now? Just briefly at this point, yeah.
It has to do with identifying where you're going at the outset, and we call these things project pillars. That every program has to have the immutable laws for the program upon which the entire program is built. And later in the show, I brought some examples where I can show you what products were developed and what was the vision or what were the pillars on each of those.
Now, from my list here, the second precept, early and frequent testing of the product with a series of prototypes and an accelerated development process. That sounds a little contradictory. Extensive testing, but an accelerated process.
Well, actually, we call this process lickety-stick. And what that is similar to how you know when spaghetti is done. You take it and you're supposed to throw it against the wall, and when it sticks, it's done. We found that on the blockbuster teams, what they do is they take rough prototypes, rough concepts, throw it up against the proverbial wall, the market. And if the market likes it, great, go with it. If not, and frequently, they say, well, you know, I don't quite like this aspect or that aspect. You got to bring it back in, change it, and get it back out. And too frequently, companies want to wait till it's perfect before they get it out, and that would be a formula for disaster.
Next precept then, exceptional information and knowledge exchange among team members and senior management. In other words, everybody knowing what everybody else is doing.
That's exactly right. It has to do with the rage now is knowledge management, and has to do with how can you get team members to be sharing information quickly and easily.
Which leads easily to the next precept, collaboration under pressure. The pressure is extensive in a competitive environment.
And that is good. A lot of times companies think that they want to try to make the environment so it's not so stressful, and we didn't find that. We found that teamwork happens, and it's not, if you would look at these blockbuster teams, you would not see everybody sitting around a campfire holding hands singing Kumbaya. They were working toward a deadline that was a hard deadline. There was a crisis usually in the company, and they were trying to get it done, and they felt that they were all pulling toward the same goal.
With proper leadership, the last precept being intimate and active support from senior management.
And actually, we really say that this is the first practice. We call this the buck starts here. And typically what senior management tends to believe is they want to empower their team, which is some of the, the current management theories now. And what we found very surprising for us on these top performing teams, the senior management was on the team, they were involved in the team, they were helping the team succeed. So the team was empowered, not because the company gave them the power, but because they had the power on the team.
And I think it's important to stress here that we're not talking about things that ought to be done. These aren't rules, these are successful experiences of other companies. So for somebody who's in the trenches as you are, this doesn't seem like ivory tower stuff, does it?
Oh, no, I think these are very excellent rules. I think we might provide a bit of clarification on some of them. For example, on the idea of testing things and frequent testing. I think Gary's point about the essence of customer involvement in the process is really crucial. And for consumer products, you tend to do that through focus groups and trials. If products tend to be more commercial, sometimes you can involve a lead customer in the process, and that provides very powerful feedback.
When going back to the role of marketing, what we found is the vision was created in a number of ways. It wasn't because a marketing research study that was done that shows there are X number of people that would like this, and they would produce this marketing requirements document, and they would then hand the marketing requirements document to engineering. That's not what happened. Typically, it worked in a number of ways on these blockbuster teams. The senior executive was the user, and they knew exactly what they wanted. Steve Wozniak created the Apple I and the Apple II. Why? Because he wanted the product for himself. Kim Edwards at iOmega, he created the zip drive. Why? Because he was sent a Bernoulli box when he was interviewing for the CEO's spot, and it said, why don't you install this on your computer? It was this huge manual that he had to go through, and he spent hours, and it says, now you got to open up your computer and throw the dip switches, and he was telling us he had no idea what a dip switch was. So he put it away in his closet, and the first day at his company, he was determined to make it easy to use. So the first aspect is they were designing a product that the designers wanted.
Gary, let me interrupt you there,
sure.
Because those are the sort of concrete examples we want to get into. But at the moment, we have to take a break. We'll be back in just a minute. Back to our discussion of the most successful ways of bringing new products to market. So, Gary, go ahead.
So let's start with the first one, and I would like to cover the management involvement first.
Sure.
We found that this concept of micromanagement, that when you tell managers micromanagement, when that term comes up, it kind of brings the hair on their neck. Oh, micromanagement, everything that we know, it's supposed to be bad. What we found was that the senior executives were right on the team, having coffee with the team every morning, rolling up their sleeves, sometimes actually doing some of the work. And so we asked the team members, we said, well, why is this not interference? Because we never heard that term used, interference. And the reason why it wasn't interference was because the CEO or the senior executives were making decisions quickly. And what the team did not like is when it took 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it was, to make a decision, and the team is just sitting there kind of twiddling their thumbs. So I think the first, and that's why we call it the buck starts here. It's got to start with the senior executive. And interestingly enough, the vision did not come from a marketing report. In our book, we talk about that the book is not about incremental innovation, it's not about disruptive, it's not about radical, it's about blockbusters. Companies sometimes feel that the innovation race is one lap around the track. You go one lap around the finish line, you break the rope, and everybody cheers. And that's not the case, especially when you're in this fourth quadrant where you have so many new things. If there's one thing you can count on when there's so many uncertainties, it's failure. And when they launch the product, there are going to be problems. And what happens is the team has to realize that they have to go around the track many times. And typically small companies don't have the capital to do that. So I believe that one of the main reasons why we have so many failures in the dot-coms and in small startups is because they only have enough money for that first lap. And it usually takes many iterations, many lickety-sticks, if you will, to get it out there, bring it back. And sometimes that foray into the market is nothing short of a full launch, and they fully launch it and there's a problem.
How can you know how much is enough capital when it's such uncharted territory?
The first has to do with expectations. Marketing people, and I'm a marketing person, so I think I can say this fairly, marketing people get paid to guess right. We're going to go out, we're going to look at the market, we're going to segment the market, we're going to find out what their needs are, we're going to give the engineering department the requirements, they're going to produce a product that meets those requirements into the marketplace, and everybody is going to be happy. For the marketing people to tell the engineering people, correctly so, you know what, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen here, but it might not be successful, that's not what the company wants to hear. But that, in fact, probably is what needs to happen. I think that it's not marketing per se, but it's having an intimate understanding of the market.
The people who've been following this discussion through the program, what would you like them to take away from this? What's the most important points that we've covered?
Well, what we have found is that developing blockbuster products is not rocket science. We do a lot of work with companies that are doing rocket science, and this isn't it. It requires the attention to these 5 practices: vision, senior management involvement, teamwork, having a good process, and having good knowledge exchange. We found that the failures do them all poorly. The successful,
the failures what?
The failures do all 5 poorly.
I see.
The merely successful but not blockbusters do 1 or 2 well. The blockbusters do all 5 of them well. And so if they do all 5 poorly, their chances of failure are about 100%. If they do them all well, the chances of failure are only 2%. Their chances of becoming a blockbuster are 71%, and their chances of succeeding are 98%. So this is based on empirical research. So we're saying that it's important to do them, but you can't just do a couple of them. You have to do them all.
What percentage of companies get 5 for 5 in your analysis?
Very few.
5%, 10% of the ones you looked at?
Usually in a company like a General Electric or a Corning or an AT&T or an Exxon, it can be maybe 1, 2 out of the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found is each division operates their new product development process differently. So even though a company has a well-defined process, what the divisions do might be very different than what the company thinks they do.
We have to leave it right there. Our guests have been Dr. Gary Lynn, Associate Professor at the Wesley J. House School of Technology Management at Stevens Institute of Technology. The title of his book, by the way, bears repeating, Blockbusters, How to Create Them and How Your Company Can Too. Our other guest, Glenn Reitmeyer, Vice President, Special Projects of Sarnoff Corporation. The program is Technogenesis, by which we mean an educational environment where scientists, industries, and students work together to bring about new technologies.